At 6:30 a.m., I found 47 violation stickers destroying my Navy patrol boat, official military equipment. Ruined. My hands shook, scraping adhesive off the American flag. The dock reeked of cheap perfume. Someone had been here recently. Not PTSD shaking, pure volcanic rage. Then she appeared. Beatrice Ashworth Klein, 63, holding that industrial sticker gun with the smuggest smile in history. Your military toy ruins our property values, sailor boy. Time for you people to find somewhere else to play soldier. You people. Military families. Like we're diseased. I'm a Navy bomb disposal specialist who survived 3 Taliban IEDs. My wife Sarah works ICU, our twin boys are 12. This lake house was supposed to be our peaceful refuge from everything I'd seen overseas. This psycho just declared war on my family. She had no idea what she'd started. What would you do? Have HOA Karens targeted your military service? Sound off below. I'm Chief Petty Officer Danny Sullivan, 23 years in the Navy specializing in EOD, explosive ordnance disposal for those who don't know military speak. I've stared death in the face more times than most people change their oil. 3 IED attacks in Afghanistan left me with PTSD, but I'm one of those quiet types who just keeps serving. I bought this lake house using my VA loan as a recovery retreat. Smart move, really. The sound of water lapping against the dock, the taste of that crisp morning air, the texture of those worn dock cleats under my calloused hands, it all helps calm my nerves. My wife Sarah works ICU at the local hospital, and our twin boys Marcus and Tyler are 12 years old and absolutely fascinated by my military stories. Now about that boat, it's not just any boat, it's a 28-foot Boston whaler, official shore patrol vessel number SP-4429. I'm responsible for weekend harbor security, part of my duties while stationed at the nearby naval base. For me, that boat represents structure, purpose, something that helps my recovery process. It's painted regulation navy gray with official markings, and every piece of equipment on board is government property. Then there's Beatrice Ashworth Klein. Everyone calls her Karen because, well, if you've ever dealt with an HOA nightmare, you know exactly why. She inherited a $2.3 million lakefront estate and has been the HOA compliance chair for 8 years. Drives an $85,000 Mercedes with vanity plates that actually say, compliance. I'm not making this up. Karen has this grand vision of turning the waterfront into some kind of luxury development. In her mind, military boats create what she calls an unsavory maritime atmosphere. Translation: she thinks my patrol boat makes the neighborhood look too working class for her wealthy buyers. So here's what happened on that Tuesday morning. Karen had been watching my schedule for weeks. She knew I leave for patrol duty every Tuesday at 6 a.m. sharp. At 5:30, she crept down to the dock wearing, and I love this detail, a full hazmat suit because she apparently thought the boat might explode. Using industrial-grade violation stickers, the kind that require a heat gun to remove, she systematically covered every surface she could reach. The hull, the windshield, the radio antennas, even the American flag. 47 stickers total, each one claiming various made-up violations of HOA rules that don't even exist. When I discovered this mess, the familiar metallic taste of adrenaline flooded my mouth. My PTSD triggers when I see official military property being disrespected. It felt like a personal attack on my service, on everything I'd sacrificed for this country. Karen wasn't done. She handed me a laminated fine schedule demanding $4,750 for unauthorized military vessel mooring. She'd actually typed this up, complete with official-looking headers and a fake legal citation format. "Mr. Sullivan," she said, standing there in her designer outfit while I scraped industrial adhesive off my government-issued equipment, "this community has standards. Your military activities are incompatible with our residential atmosphere." The smell of that adhesive remover mixed with my morning coffee created this awful chemical cocktail that I would associate with the beginning of my war with Karen. Because make no mistake, that's exactly what this became. My first instinct was to report this to my commanding officer, but I decided to try handling it the civilian way first. Big mistake. Karen interpreted my restraint as weakness, my professionalism as fear. She had no idea she was messing with someone who'd spent 2 decades defusing bombs under pressure. What Karen also didn't realize was that vandalizing official military property is a federal crime. And me? Well, I knew people. Shore patrol people. People who don't take kindly to civilians messing with Navy equipment. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, Karen had to escalate things, because that's what Karens do. 3 days after the sticker incident, Karen decided to go nuclear. She filed a formal complaint with the Coast Guard claiming my patrol boat lacks proper civilian registration and poses a homeland security risk. Now, if you know anything about maritime law, this is like calling the fire department because your neighbor's sprinkler system might be too wet. Lieutenant Rodriguez from the Coast Guard showed up the following Monday, clipboard in hand, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. I met him at the dock, where the morning sun was creating that perfect mirror reflection on the water you only see before the wind picks up. "Sir, we received a complaint about this vessel," Rodriguez said, trying to maintain his professional demeanor while obviously thinking this was ridiculous. I handed over my documentation: official Navy registration, shore patrol assignment papers, my military ID, insurance papers, everything properly filed and up to date. Rodriguez examined each document with the thoroughness of someone who knows he's about to waste an hour of his life on bureaucratic nonsense. "This is clearly a properly documented military vessel," Rodriguez told me. "I don't understand the nature of the complaint." That's when Karen appeared, as if summoned by the scent of official drama. She'd been watching from her mansion with those $400 marine binoculars she'd ordered specifically for spying on me. "Officer, this man has been intimidating federal inspectors," she announced, striding down her perfectly manicured lawn. "I demand you investigate his suspicious explosive materials." Rodriguez looked at me. I looked at Rodriguez. We both looked at Karen like she'd just claimed the boat was actually a disguised alien spacecraft. Now here's where my military training kicked in. In the EOD world, you learn that panic gets people killed, so you stay calm no matter how crazy the situation gets. I offered Rodriguez a complete tour of the boat's safety equipment: Coast Guard approved flares, regulation life jackets, emergency radio equipment, everything by the book. Karen wasn't having it. "He's hiding something. Why else would he have military equipment in a civilian area?" Rodriguez had reached his limit. "Ma'am, this is an official Navy vessel with proper documentation. The operator is qualified military personnel conducting authorized shore patrol duties. There's no violation of any maritime law." But Karen had already escalated to the next level. While Rodriguez was still on the dock, she was on her phone with someone, speaking loud enough for everyone to hear. "Yes, I need to report military intimidation of federal officers. The subject appears to have access to explosive devices." That's when I learned something important about federal law. When civilians make false reports to federal agencies, especially involving national security claims, those agencies take it seriously. Even when the reports are obviously bogus, they have to investigate. And my commanding officer, Captain Hayes, was not happy about getting a call from federal investigators asking about one of his shore patrol officers. Here's the knowledge nugget I discovered during my research that week. Under federal maritime law, HOA authority stops at the high tide line. Military vessels operating under official orders have federal jurisdiction that supersedes any local regulations. Translation: HOAs can't regulate official military vessels, period. But Karen wasn't done. I found out later that week that she'd been busy. The same complaint she'd filed about my boat had been filed about 6 other military families in the neighborhood. Same language, same accusations, same ridiculous homeland security claims. The mini twist came when Rodriguez called me personally. "Chief Sullivan, I wanted to give you a heads up. We've received identical complaints about multiple military families in your area. Someone's running a campaign here." I felt that familiar pre-mission focus settling in. This wasn't random HOA harassment anymore. This was systematic targeting of military personnel. And in my world, when someone targets military families, you don't just defend, you investigate. I started keeping detailed logs, military-style after-action reports documenting every interaction with Karen. Times, dates, witnesses, exact quotes. The kind of documentation that would make a JAG lawyer smile. Meanwhile, Karen was developing her own intelligence operation. Those expensive binoculars weren't just for show. She was documenting my patrol schedule, photographing everyone who visited my dock, and building what she called her evidence file of military activities. The smell of Karen's constant cigarette smoke drifting across the water during her surveillance sessions became as regular as the morning fog. My neighbors started joking that they could tell time by when Karen's spy session began each day. But Karen made one crucial miscalculation. She thought my professional restraint meant I was backing down. In reality, I was doing what every good EOD specialist does when they encounter an unexploded device: assess the threat, understand the mechanism, and prepare for controlled detonation. The war was just beginning. 2 weeks later, Karen launched Phase 2 of her campaign. She'd formed something called the Civilian Harbor Safety Committee and somehow convinced 3 elderly neighbors to sign a petition demanding a military-free waterfront. The petition claimed Navy boats created noise pollution, fuel contamination, and attract undesirable military personnel to our peaceful community. I read this over my morning coffee, the steam rising from my mug mixing with that crisp October air that smells like dying leaves and diesel fuel from the marina. What struck me wasn't just the obvious discrimination, it was the language, too polished, too legal-sounding for a neighborhood petition, so I did what any good investigator would do. I knocked on doors. Mrs. Henderson, 82 years old and sharp as a tack, answered her door with a puzzled expression. "Petition? What petition, dear?" "The one with your signature requesting removal of military boats from the harbor." "Young man, I would never sign such a thing. My late husband was Navy for 30 years. 2 doors down, Mr. Garcia had the same response. "I didn't sign anything against military families. My son's deployed in the Pacific right now." That's when I realized something important about handwriting analysis. After years of documenting explosive devices for federal investigators, you develop an eye for details. The signatures on positions 2 and 3 of Karen's petition matched the handwriting on those violation stickers perfectly. I documented the forgeries with photographs, got signed statements from the neighbors whose names had been forged, and prepared a comprehensive report for the HOA board. Military precision applied to civilian bureaucracy. Karen's response was swift and predictable. She filed a police report claiming I had threatened her with military violence during our confrontation at the dock. Officer Martinez responded to the call, and I recognized him from the local veterans group meetings. Martinez listened to Karen's dramatic account of being intimidated by aggressive military tactics, then asked to see the alleged threat documentation. Karen's evidence consisted of me saying, "Ma'am, you've forged signatures on this petition, and I have documentation proving it." "That sounds like a factual statement, not a threat," Martinez told Karen. Then he turned to me. "Chief, I've seen this pattern before. Document everything, keep records, stay professional." But Karen's escalation was just getting started. That Thursday, Sarah came home from her hospital shift looking shaken. Someone had left anonymous notes on her car windshield calling her military wife trash and suggesting she find a husband who doesn't kill people for a living. The notes were written in that same distinctive handwriting I had memorized from the violation stickers. When the twins asked why the mean lady hated Daddy's job protecting people, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just harassment anymore. This was psychological warfare against my family. Here's another knowledge nugget I discovered during my late-night research sessions. Under the Federal False Statements Act, lying to federal agencies carries a 5-year prison sentence. Every false report Karen had filed with the Coast Guard was a documented felony. Translation: don't lie to the Coast Guard about military equipment. The real mini-twist came when I installed motion-activated security cameras around my dock area. Modern technology is amazing. These things could capture crystal-clear footage at 3 in the morning and automatically upload to cloud storage. What the cameras revealed would have been funny if it wasn't so disturbing. Karen was conducting regular surveillance missions, creeping around the marina at odd hours with a professional-grade camera, photographing not just my boat but anyone who visited my dock. She'd created what could only be described as a stalker's dossier, complete with photos of the twins playing on the dock and Sarah reading a book in her beach chair. But Karen's masterpiece was her surveillance schedule. She'd somehow obtained my complete shore patrol duty roster, classified military information, and was timing her harassment campaigns to coincide with my absences. That meant someone was feeding her intelligence from inside the system. I realized the scope of the problem when I started talking to other military families in the neighborhood. Lieutenant Commander Jackson reported identical harassment. Petty Officer Thompson had received the same forged violations. Sergeant Davis from the Marine base had been dealing with noise complaints filed during his deployment. Karen wasn't just targeting me. She was running a systematic campaign against every military family in the community. The smell of paranoia was thick in the air those days, mixing with the natural lake scents like some toxic perfume. Every time I left for patrol duty, I wondered what I'd find when I returned. Every time Sarah went to work, We both worried about what harassment awaited her in the hospital parking lot. But I was learning something important about Karen's psychology. She craved confrontation. She fed on drama. Every professional response I gave, every time I followed proper procedures instead of losing my temper, it frustrated her more. And frustrated people make mistakes. By November, Karen had moved from psychological warfare to physical confrontation. I was preparing for morning patrol duty when I found her Mercedes parked directly across the boat launch ramp, not beside it, not near it, literally blocking the federal waterway access that I was required to use for official shore patrol duties. Karen stood in 6 inches of lake water wearing designer heels and a white pantsuit, screaming about an emergency HOA meeting that supposedly gave her authority to block federal maritime operations. The contrast was surreal. This perfectly coiffed woman standing in muddy water, designer handbag clutched against her chest, makeup running slightly in the morning humidity. "You cannot launch that vessel until our safety committee completes its environmental assessment," she announced, waving a folder of official-looking papers. I took a deep breath, tasting that familiar mix of diesel fuel and morning mist. My EOD training kicked in again. When someone's blocking your mission, you don't escalate. You adapt and overcome. "Ma'am, I have federal orders to conduct harbor patrol. You're interfering with official military operations." "I don't care about your military orders. This is a civilian community." That's when Petty Officer Bellamy arrived as backup. I had called base security the moment I saw Karen's car blocking the ramp. Bellamy witnessed the entire confrontation, including Karen's increasingly hysterical claims about having authority over federal waterways. "Sir," Bellamy told me quietly, "this constitutes interference with military operations under federal law. Should I contact Shore Patrol Command?" Karen overheard and became even more agitated. "Are you threatening me? I'm documenting everything for my attorney." She was, literally. Karen had a professional video camera running, apparently planning to use footage of my aggressive military behavior in her legal campaign. The situation de-escalated when Marina Management arrived and threatened to have Karen's car towed for blocking emergency access. But 2 days later, I discovered the real escalation. Someone had superglued industrial-strength condemned notices to my boat hull. Not HOA stickers this time, official-looking documents claiming to be from something called the Federal Maritime Safety Board, complete with fake government seals and legal language about immediate hazardous vessel removal. The damage wasn't just cosmetic. Industrial adhesive had bonded with the Navy's gel coat finish, requiring professional removal that would cost $20,800. Government property damaged by civilian vandalism, a federal crime with serious consequences. I photographed everything before attempting removal, documenting the fake federal seals and forged agency headers. The chemical smell of adhesive remover mixed with my morning coffee created this awful cocktail that somehow seemed to perfectly capture the absurdity of the situation. Here's the knowledge nugget I learned while researching federal property damage laws. Vandalism of military equipment automatically triggers FBI jurisdiction, regardless of the dollar amount involved. Military property belongs to the American taxpayers, and the federal government takes damage seriously. Translation: messing with military equipment brings federal heat. But Karen's psychological profile was becoming clearer. She'd hired a private investigator to build a case against my illegal military activities. The PI, a professional named Rodriguez Investigations, spent 3 weeks documenting my completely legal, completely regulation shore patrol duties. The mini twist came when PI Rodriguez called me directly. "Chief Sullivan, I'm obligated to tell you that my client's concerns appear to be without merit. Your activities are fully documented, properly authorized, and completely legal. I've advised my client to discontinue this investigation." What did she say to that? She fired me and hired someone else. That someone else turned out to be Karen's drug-addicted nephew Trevor, a 26-year-old with a criminal record who was willing to do surveillance work in exchange for rent money. Trevor's investigative technique consisted of sitting in his rusted Honda Civic with a pair of drugstore binoculars, chain-smoking cigarettes, and taking blurry photos of my boat. The irony was that Karen's own security cameras were accidentally working against her. During her 3 a.m. vandalism mission with the fake condemned notices, she'd worn a camouflage outfit, apparently thinking it would make her invisible. Instead, her own motion-activated cameras captured perfect footage of her committing federal crimes. I discovered this when Marina Security showed me the overnight footage. There was Karen, creeping around the dock in full camouflage gear, industrial adhesive and fake federal documents in hand, methodically vandalizing government property while her own cameras recorded the evidence. The security guard couldn't stop laughing. She spent 40 minutes positioning those fake notices, kept checking her phone for the camera angles. Lady filmed her own crime spree. I felt something shift in my tactical approach. Up until now, I'd been playing defense, documenting harassment, following procedures, taking the high road. But Karen's escalation to physical property damage and fake federal documents crossed a line. It was time for a Navy EOD specialist to do what he did best: identify the target, understand the explosive mechanism, and prepare for controlled detonation. The gloves were coming off. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. I had noticed that Karen always seemed to know my exact patrol schedule, not just the regular Tuesday and Thursday duties, but the special assignments, the emergency calls, even the training exercises. Someone was feeding her classified military information. I started paying attention to timing. Every harassment incident coincided perfectly with my scheduled departures. Every fake violation appeared within hours of my duty roster being updated. Karen's surveillance operations matched my absence schedule with military precision. So, I set a trap. I submitted a fake duty change through official channels reporting that I'd be conducting extended night operations the following Thursday. Then I parked across the street from the marina and waited. Thursday evening, 11:47 p.m., Karen's Mercedes pulled into the marina parking lot. She crept toward my boat with a fresh batch of violation stickers, confident that I was safely away on fake patrol duty. But I was watching from the shadows, documenting everything with night vision equipment, military surveillance technology applied to civilian stupidity. The next morning, I confronted the marina office staff. Someone's been providing my duty schedule to unauthorized personnel. That's a breach of operational security. Maria Gonzalez, the part-time marina clerk, broke down within 5 minutes. She was paying me $500 a week just to tell her when you'd be away. I didn't think it was a big deal. You didn't think compromising military patrol schedules was a big deal? Maria's face went pale as she realized the implications. Under the Homeland Security Act, compromising military operational information, even routine patrol schedules, constitutes a potential security breach. The penalties start at 10 years federal prison. But that wasn't the biggest revelation. While investigating Karen's information network, I discovered her real motivation. This wasn't just random HOA power tripping. Karen was running a systematic campaign to eliminate military families from the entire waterfront community. Property records revealed the truth. Karen owned 40% of Pemberton Development LLC, a luxury construction company planning a $50 million waterfront resort. The project required eliminating all undesirable elements to attract wealthy buyers. Military families, with their government boats and working-class backgrounds, didn't fit the upscale image. Karen had successfully forced 5 military families to relocate over the past 2 years using identical harassment tactics. The pattern was clear: escalate complaints, file false reports, make life unbearable until they gave up and moved away. Financial documents showed even more concerning details. Karen's luxury development had violated 3 environmental permits during construction, built a private dock without proper Navy clearance for waterfront projects near the base, and failed to obtain proper zoning variances for commercial development in residential areas. Here's the federal law knowledge nugget that changed everything. Paying for classified information, even routine duty schedules, constitutes bribery under federal statutes and carries a 10-year mandatory sentence. Translation: bribing for military intel is a felony, even if it's just patrol times. I realized I'd been fighting the wrong battle. This wasn't about boat violations or noise complaints. This was about systematic discrimination against military families for financial gain. Karen was essentially running a housing discrimination scheme with federal crime enhancement. The power dynamic completely shifted. Karen thought she was harassing one stubborn sailor who refused to follow HOA rules. In reality, she'd been committing multiple federal felonies against a trained investigator who now understood her complete criminal enterprise. I contacted the other targeted military families and shared my intelligence. Lieutenant Commander Jackson had documented identical harassment patterns. Sergeant Davis had been dealing with the same fake violations. Petty Officer Thompson had received threats identical to Sarah's anonymous notes. Karen had created what federal prosecutors would recognize as a criminal conspiracy, systematic targeting of protected class individuals, military families, using federal crimes, false reports, bribery, vandalism of government property, for financial gain, real estate development fraud. But my military training taught me that intelligence is only valuable if you act on it properly. Random retaliation would just make me look like the aggressive military stereotype Karen was trying to portray. Instead, I began planning a counter-operation with the same methodical precision I'd used for defusing bombs in Afghanistan. Every detail documented, every move calculated, every contingency planned. Karen had no idea that her harassment campaign against a simple sailor had actually been targeting a federal investigator with 23 years of experience in controlled explosions. The countdown to detonation had begun. My garage became a tactical planning center that would have impressed my old EOD unit. Military-issued laptops displaying federal law databases, printed surveillance photos organized by date and time, and a detailed schematic of the Marina's security camera coverage patterns. But the centerpiece was my masterpiece, a pressure-sensitive paint system that would make any booby trap instructor proud. The mechanism was elegant in its simplicity. Military-grade marking compound, the same non-toxic but highly persistent paint used for training exercises, connected to pressure plates salvaged from old ordnance disposal equipment. When someone stepped on my boat deck without authorization, they'd trigger a paint release that would coat them head to toe in bright green marking compound designed to last 3 weeks. My hands moved with practiced precision as I installed the system, muscle memory from years of working with sensitive trigger mechanisms. The smell of marine-grade sealant mixed with that distinctive metallic scent of military hardware, creating an oddly nostalgic combination that reminded me of my explosive ordnance days. "Honey, are you building a booby trap?" Sarah asked, watching from the garage doorway. "I'm installing a security system that uses visible marking compound for trespasser identification," I replied with military formality, completely legal under federal property protection statutes. The legal research had been thorough. I consulted Base JAG attorney Lieutenant Colonel Morrison about federal property protection laws, discovering that military personnel have extensive rights to protect government equipment from vandalism. Marking systems, surveillance equipment, and controlled access devices all fall within authorized security measures. But the paint trap was just phase 1. I had also installed motion-activated infrared cameras with cloud backup, ensuring that any nighttime harassment would be documented in federal evidence quality. Modern surveillance technology merged with old-school military ingenuity. Here's the knowledge nugget that made my system bulletproof. Federal marking compound used for training is completely legal for property protection, leaves no permanent damage, and creates evidence that holds up in federal court. Translation: military has better toys than Home Depot for catching vandals. Meanwhile, I was building alliances. The Veterans Harbor Watch consisted of 12 military families who'd been documenting Karen's systematic harassment. Each family provided detailed records of violations, threats, and property damage, creating a comprehensive case file that would make any federal prosecutor smile. Lieutenant Commander Jackson contributed financial analysis showing Karen's development company owed $340,000 in unpaid environmental fines. Sergeant Davis provided evidence of Karen's attempts to bribe city council members for zoning variances. Petty Officer Thompson had documentation of Karen's discriminatory statements about military families lowering property values. I coordinated with base security to schedule increased routine patrols past Karen's property during her predicted harassment times. Shore patrol vessels would be strategically positioned to respond within minutes when the paint trap activated. The timeline was critical. Based on surveillance patterns, Karen conducted her major vandalism missions during new moon phases when natural light was minimal. The next new moon was November 23rd, perfect timing for my trap. But my most crucial alliance was with investigative reporter Lisa Bellamy from the regional news station. Lisa specialized in military family issues and had been tracking discrimination patterns in waterfront communities. She agreed to investigate Karen's systematic targeting of military families in exchange for exclusive access to the story. Federal coordination took longer but proved worth the effort. FBI Special Agent Rodriguez, no relation to the failed private investigator, opened a preliminary investigation into Karen's pattern of filing false federal reports and bribing for military information. My backup plans covered every contingency. If Karen avoided the boat, secondary traps were prepared for the dock area. If she sent Trevor instead, cameras would capture conspiracy evidence. If she escalated to serious property damage, Shore Patrol was standing by for immediate response. The technical preparation reminded me of my EOD days, methodical, precise, with multiple redundancies built into every system. The difference was that instead of diffusing explosive devices, I was preparing to detonate Karen's criminal enterprise. My commanding officer, Captain Hayes, reviewed the entire operation plan during a private briefing. "Chief Sullivan, this is either the most elaborate neighborhood dispute resolution I've ever seen, or you're applying military tactics to civilian law enforcement. Sir, when civilians target military families using federal crimes, it becomes a military concern." Captain Hayes approved additional Shore Patrol resources for enhanced harbor security during the operation window. The official reason was routine training exercises. The unofficial reason was that nobody messes with Navy families on Captain Hayes's watch. As November 23rd approached, I felt that familiar pre-mission calm settling over me. Every detail planned, every contingency covered, every piece of equipment tested and ready. Karen had spent months escalating her harassment campaign, but she had no idea she was about to walk into a trap designed by someone who'd spent 2 decades outsmarting people who built bombs for a living. The paint was loaded, the cameras were recording, the cavalry was standing by. Game time. Karen's desperation reached new heights when her restraining order petition was not only denied, but resulted in a judicial warning about frivolous filings. Judge Martinez, a Navy veteran himself, had reviewed my evidence folder and found Karen's claims of military stalking and intimidation completely without merit. Ms. Ashworth Klein, Judge Martinez said during the hearing, filing false accusations against military personnel serving their community is not only frivolous, but potentially criminal. I'm ordering you to cease all harassment of the Sullivan family immediately. But instead of backing down, Karen doubled down. Within hours of leaving the courthouse, she was back at the marina with her nephew Trevor and a briefcase full of cash. Marina clerk. Maria Gonzalez later testified that Karen had offered her $2,000 to accidentally damage my boat with dock equipment during routine maintenance. Maria, still shaken from learning about federal security breach charges, immediately called Shore Patrol to report the bribery attempt. "She wanted me to make it look like an accident," Maria told Petty Officer Bellamy. "Said she'd pay me $5,000 total if the boat was damaged enough to require removal from the marina." This wasn't harassment anymore. This was conspiracy to commit federal crimes. I continued my regular patrol duties while my trap waited in perfect readiness. The pressure plates were calibrated, the paint cartridges were loaded, and the cameras were recording everything in federal evidence quality. Every morning, I checked the system during my routine boat inspection, maintaining the same professional demeanor that had frustrated Karen for months. But Karen was building her own intelligence network. She'd installed professional surveillance cameras aimed directly at my boat, creating a 24/7 monitoring system that she operated from her mansion's second-floor window. The irony was delicious. Karen was documenting her own obsessive harassment behavior. The smell of her constant cigarette smoke during surveillance sessions had become a running joke among marina residents. People started referring to her window as Karen's crow's nest, complete with high-powered binoculars and what appeared to be a radio scanner to monitor Shore Patrol frequencies. I discovered the radio scanner detail when my communications specialist buddy ran a routine equipment check. "Chief, someone's been monitoring our patrol frequencies from a residential area. Signal strength suggests close proximity to your marina." Here's another knowledge nugget that I found particularly interesting. Under federal stalking laws, targeting military families specifically for their service status qualifies for hate crime enhancement, which can add 10 years to any sentence. Translation: harassing people for being military can add serious time to any conviction. The mini-twist came when Karen's surveillance operation backfired spectacularly. Her obsessive monitoring had captured dozens of hours of footage showing me conducting completely normal, completely legal patrol duties. When she tried to present this as evidence of suspicious military activities to local police, Officer Martinez reviewed the footage and found nothing but routine harbor security operations. "Ma'am, this video shows a sailor doing his job professionally and legally. If anything, it demonstrates his restraint in dealing with your harassment." Karen's response was to escalate to the FBI directly, claiming I was running unauthorized military operations in civilian areas. Special Agent Rodriguez was assigned to investigate these claims, which meant I found myself sitting across from a federal investigator, explaining why my official shore patrol duties somehow constituted suspicious activity. Ms. Ashworth-Klein seems to believe that military personnel conducting authorized patrols represents a threat to community safety, Agent Rodriguez told me. She's provided 47 hours of surveillance footage as evidence. What does the footage show? You doing your job. Very professionally, I might add. Agent Rodriguez's investigation revealed the full scope of Karen's surveillance operation. She'd been monitoring not just me, but all 12 military families in the community. Detailed logs of our work schedules, photographs of our children, documentation of our visitors. It was a stalking operation that would have impressed the Stasi. Meanwhile, Karen had recruited her nephew Trevor for what she called a major operation against my boat. Trevor, desperate for drug money and rent payments, agreed to help with what Karen described as evidence gathering that would finally prove my illegal activities. Trevor's criminal record included breaking and entering, vandalism, and drug possession, exactly the kind of accomplice who turns a misdemeanor harassment case into a federal conspiracy charge. Karen was unknowingly building a criminal enterprise that would make federal prosecutors very happy. The HOA board, finally realizing that Karen's compliance committee was becoming a legal liability, voted to distance themselves from her activities. 3 board members formally requested that Karen cease all enforcement actions pending legal review of her methods. Karen's isolation was complete. Her surveillance operation had alienated the neighbors. Her legal threats had been dismissed by the courts. Her bribery attempts were being investigated by federal agents, and her own family was questioning her obsession with removing military elements from the community. But isolation makes desperate people even more dangerous. By mid-November, Karen had moved from desperation into full delusion. She organized what she called the Citizens Committee for Harbor Safety, planning a public meeting with city council members and local media to expose what she termed the military occupation of our civilian community. Her strategy was simple: present me as a dangerous military extremist whose presence threatened community safety, using her 47 hours of surveillance footage as evidence. She'd prepared a PowerPoint presentation titled Homeland Security Threats in Residential Areas and invited 3 city council members, 2 local reporters, and the Marina Management Company. Karen's nephew Trevor had graduated from surveillance to active participation. His role in the major operation involved bringing bolt cutters and a crowbar for what Karen called evidence gathering from my boat. Trevor, desperate for his aunt's money and too drug-addled to understand federal conspiracy laws, agreed to help with the 3 a.m. mission planned for November 23rd. We're going to document the military equipment he's hiding, Karen explained to Trevor during their planning session. Once we have photographic evidence of weapons or explosive devices, the authorities will have to remove him. Karen's confidence was absolute. She'd scheduled a 9 a.m. press conference for November 23rd to reveal her proof of military threats. Marina Management had received official notice that she intended to present evidence justifying my immediate removal from the community. I monitored this through my network of witnesses and federal investigators, maintaining my professional calm while my trap waited in perfect readiness. Shore Patrol Communications had intercepted Karen's radio scanner activities, and base security was aware of her planned operation. The technical details were beautiful in their precision. Pressure plates calibrated to trigger at exactly 47 pounds, enough to avoid false alarms from seagulls but guaranteed to activate when an adult human stepped on my boat deck. Paint cartridges loaded with military-grade marking compound that would create an explosion of bright green pigment visible from 300 yards away. Captain Hayes had positioned Shore Patrol vessel SP-44431 just beyond visual range but within rapid response distance. Federal surveillance teams were documenting Karen's conspiracy planning through her own surveillance equipment. The irony was perfect. Karen's obsessive monitoring had created a federal evidence trail of her criminal planning. Here's the knowledge nugget that sealed Karen's fate. Under federal conspiracy laws, planning to damage military property with multiple participants elevates charges significantly, and bringing tools specifically for property destruction demonstrates premeditation. Translation: bringing helpers to commit federal crimes multiplies everyone's penalties. The morning of November 23rd, I conducted my routine equipment check with unusual attention to detail. The pre-dawn silence was broken only by the gentle lapping of water against the dock and the distant sound of Karen's Mercedes approaching for what she believed would be her final victory. Karen arrived at 3:30 a.m. with Trevor, a documentary camera, to record their evidence gathering, and prepared evidence bags for her morning press conference. She'd even prepared police-style tape to secure the crime scene after documenting my supposed weapons cache. Trevor carried professional-grade bolt cutters and a crowbar, tools specifically chosen for accessing locked compartments on my boat. The federal conspiracy case was building itself as surveillance cameras recorded every detail of their preparation. "Remember," Karen whispered to Trevor as they approached the dock, "we need photographic evidence of military weapons or explosive materials. The press conference is in 5 hours." Karen had no idea that my commanding officer was monitoring the situation from offshore, that federal agents were recording her conspiracy through her own surveillance equipment, or that her nephew was about to become co-defendant in a federal criminal case. She also had no idea that military marking compound, when released under pressure, creates a paint explosion that can be seen from space. The pre-dawn darkness was perfect cover for Karen's approach, but it also concealed the shore patrol vessels positioned for rapid response. Federal surveillance teams had night vision equipment focused on the marina, ensuring that every detail of Karen's crime would be documented in prosecution-quality footage. I reviewed the tactical situation from my kitchen window, feeling that familiar pre-mission calm that came from perfect preparation meeting perfect opportunity. Every detail planned, every contingency covered, every piece of equipment tested and ready. Karen stepped onto the boat deck at exactly 3:47 a.m., confident that her months of surveillance had revealed the perfect moment for her final assault on my military career. She had no idea she was about to become the star of the most spectacular federal arrest in marina history. The pressure plate registered 127 pounds of Karen's confident stride, the paint cartridges activated with military precision, and Karen Ashworth Klein's life changed forever in a brilliant explosion of federal evidence. The explosion was magnificent. Military-grade marking compound erupted from concealed dispensers with the precision of a controlled demolition, coating Karen from head to toe in bright green paint that glowed like a traffic light under the marina's security lighting. The pressure-sensitive system that I had calibrated so carefully delivered exactly what it promised: complete coverage of the trespasser in federal evidence-quality marking compound. Karen's scream echoed across the water, a sound of pure shock and rage that probably woke half the neighborhood. She stood frozen on the boat deck, dripping green paint that was already beginning to bond with her skin and clothing, while Trevor panicked on the dock. "What the hell?" Trevor shouted, dropping the bolt cutters and crowbar as secondary paint dispensers activated, coating him in the same brilliant green marking compound. "You didn't say nothing about booby traps." The hidden cameras were capturing everything in high-definition federal evidence quality. Karen's attempted breaking and entering, Trevor's criminal tools, their planned vandalism of military property, and their spectacular paint-covered arrest in progress. Within 90 seconds, Shore Patrol vessel SP-44431 arrived with emergency lights blazing. Captain Hayes had been monitoring radio communications from offshore, and the moment my security system activated, 2 patrol boats converged on the marina with military efficiency. My commanding officer stepped onto the dock in full uniform, flanked by 2 shore patrol officers and a federal investigator who'd been waiting for exactly this moment. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for destruction of federal property, conspiracy to commit vandalism, and interference with military operations," Captain Hayes announced with the authority of someone who'd been planning this arrest for weeks. Karen, still dripping green paint and trying to wipe it from her eyes, became hysterical. "This is a military conspiracy. He booby-trapped his boat. This is assault." "Ma'am, you were trespassing on federal property with tools intended for property destruction. The marking compound is non-toxic training material legally used for security purposes." Trevor, panicking and covered in paint, tried to run but slipped on the dock and landed face first in a puddle of green marking compound. Shore Patrol officers had him in handcuffs before he could stand up. The morning joggers and dog walkers who'd gathered to investigate the commotion couldn't stop staring. Karen Ashworth Klein, the terror of the HOA Compliance Committee, stood there in designer pajamas completely covered in military green paint, handcuffed and ranting about military conspiracies while Shore Patrol officers read her federal rights. "This is harassment. This is discrimination against civilians. I demand my lawyer." Special Agent Rodriguez, who'd been building the federal case for weeks, stepped forward with a folder of evidence that was 3 inches thick. Ms. Ashworth Klein, you're also being charged with bribery of federal informants, filing false federal reports, and systematic harassment of military families. The irony was perfect. Karen's own documentary camera had recorded her entire criminal operation. The footage she'd planned to use as evidence against me instead showed her committing multiple federal felonies while covered in paint that would take 3 weeks to fade. I emerged from my house in full military dress uniform, presenting myself as the professional military officer I'd always been. No gloating, no satisfaction, just calm documentation of federal crimes being processed according to military justice standards. Sir, I addressed Captain Hayes with proper military protocol. All security systems functioned as designed. Trespassers have been marked with training compound and are ready for federal processing. The gathered crowd included 3 city council members who'd been invited to Karen's planned press conference. Instead of seeing evidence of military threats, they witnessed a textbook example of federal law enforcement arresting civilians who'd been systematically targeting military families. Here's the technical detail that made my system perfect. Military marking compound is designed to be highly visible, completely non-toxic, and impossible to remove quickly. Karen would be green for weeks, a walking advertisement of federal justice. Translation: military equipment comes with military-grade consequences. Channel 7 News arrived as Karen was being loaded into the federal transport vehicle, still ranting about military conspiracies while covered head to toe in paint that made her look like a rejected mascot for environmental awareness. Reporter Lisa Bellamy had the exclusive story she'd been promised: systematic discrimination against military families, federal crimes caught on camera, and the most spectacular arrest in local marina history. This morning, federal agents arrested 2 civilians who've been conducting a months-long harassment campaign against military families in this waterfront community, Lisa reported while Karen screamed about military booby traps from inside the federal transport vehicle. I watched the arrest with the same professional calm I'd maintained throughout Karen's harassment campaign. No celebration, no vindication, just satisfaction that federal justice had been served with military precision. The paint explosion had been spectacular, but the real explosion was Karen's criminal enterprise finally detonating under the weight of federal evidence. Justice served, military style. The federal charges against Karen read like a prosecutor's dream case. 14 counts, including destruction of federal property, bribery of federal informants, conspiracy to commit vandalism, filing false federal reports, and systematic harassment of military families under federal hate crime enhancement statutes. Karen's attorney tried negotiating a plea deal, but the evidence was overwhelming. Surveillance footage of her crimes, documented bribery attempts, 47 hours of her own stalking videos, and testimony from 12 military families created an airtight federal case. The paint evidence was just spectacular icing on an already perfect prosecution cake. 3 months later, Karen was sentenced to 18 months federal prison and ordered to pay $73,000 in restitution covering property damage, legal costs, and federal investigation expenses. Her nephew Trevor received 6 months and community service, specifically cleaning veterans' memorial sites every weekend for 2 years. The financial impact was devastating for Karen. Legal fees consumed her savings, federal restitution payments required selling her lakefront mansion, and the publicity destroyed her luxury development project. Pemberton Development LLC dissolved under the weight of environmental fines and federal scrutiny. But the real victory was systemic change. Karen's case became federal precedent for protecting military families against housing discrimination. The Department of Justice issued new guidelines specifically addressing harassment of military personnel in civilian communities, creating legal protections that extended nationwide. The Marina implemented new security protocols with federal liaison positions, ensuring military families received proper protection. Signs were posted clarifying federal jurisdiction over military vessels and warning about penalties for interfering with military operations. My twins, Marcus and Tyler, became neighborhood celebrities as the kids whose dad caught the Green Lady. The paint trap story spread through military communities worldwide, becoming legend among shore patrol officers who dealt with civilian harassment. Sarah noticed the biggest change in my PTSD symptoms. Having my community support my military service, instead of attacking it, provided healing that years of therapy hadn't achieved. The boat dock became peaceful again, filled with the natural sounds of water and wind instead of Karen's cigarette smoke and surveillance equipment. The Harbor Heroes program that I started attracted military families from across the region. Teaching boat safety to military children created positive community connections while honoring the service that Karen had tried to criminalize. Federal grants provided $340,000 for new mental health resources, specifically supporting military families facing housing harassment. The program expanded statewide after documentation proved systematic discrimination was occurring in multiple waterfront communities. The annual Military Appreciation Harbor Festival brings together civilian and military families every November 23rd, the anniversary of Karen's arrest. Local businesses sponsor events honoring military service while celebrating the community cooperation that ended Karen's harassment campaign. Karen's green-tinted complexion became local legend. Even after the paint faded, residents nicknamed her the Grinch of the Harbor, though she'd moved to a retirement community in Arizona with strict HOA rules that apparently didn't appreciate her compliance enforcement history. Trevor completed his community service and entered a veteran-sponsored addiction recovery program. The irony of military families helping Karen's nephew overcome the problems that led to his federal charges wasn't lost on anyone. I received formal commendation from Base Command for handling civilian harassment with military discipline and professionalism. Captain Hayes noted that my approach created positive community relations while protecting military families through proper legal channels. Property values in the marina community actually increased after Karen's removal. Military families provided stability, professional maintenance of properties, and positive community involvement that attracted quality residents who appreciated living near people who served their country. The investigative reporting by Lisa Bellamy won regional journalism awards and sparked congressional hearings on systematic discrimination against military families and civilian communities. Federal legislation now provides stronger protections and more severe penalties for targeting military personnel. 6 months after Karen's arrest, I was teaching my sons proper knot-tying techniques when Tyler asked, "Dad, why did the mean lady hate us so much?" "Son, some people are afraid of things they don't understand. But when good people work together, justice always wins." The marina was peaceful that evening, filled with families enjoying the water and the community that had rallied to protect its military members. My shore patrol boat sat properly moored and properly respected, flying the American flag that Karen had once tried to hide. The smell of barbecue from the community dock party mixed with diesel fuel and lake water, creating the perfect scent of home. If you've dealt with HOA nightmares or harassment because of your military service, share your story in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about justice served military style. These heroes deserve our support, and sometimes the best support is making sure everyone knows what happens when you mess with military families. Justice served, community protected, mission accomplished.